Welcome back to the Red Dice Diaries, and in this GM's tips video I'm going to be offering what I think is one of the fundamental pieces of advice that I can give to any GM, and that is steal absolutely everything inspiration wise that you can get your greedy little mitts on. Now, our brain is like a huge melting pot, and every day we throw new ingredients into it. When it comes to looking for an idea, we dip our spoon into the pot and we have a little taste of the fermenting broth of inspiration that's inside it, and occasionally the flavours combine in new and interesting ways and we get something really great out of it. Sometimes it doesn't always work and we may discard ideas or come up with something that perhaps isn't suitable. However, you can always throw more ingredients in, and basically the more you put into the pot, the more likelihood is that they'll combine in strange and unusual ways. In your home campaign, if you're not planning to publish it, then you don't have to worry about copyrights and such like, so don't limit yourself to where your ideas come from. Like I said at the start, steal absolutely everything you can. You can never have too much inspiration in your mind. So, here's some tips from me for the would-be thieving GM to maximise the amount of inspiration you can get. Tip number 1, carry a notebook with you whenever possible. Now, you never know when an idea is going to hit you. You could be out for a walk, you could be sat at home watching something on TV, you never know. And if you rely on your memory, you may get distracted by other things in life, like we all do, and you may just forget about it. And you may never remember it again. And that's a shame. But if you jot it down in a small notebook, when you want to look for an idea, you can just flick back through the pages of your notebook and have a look at these past ideas that you've had. It's captured forever on the pages of your notebook. Now, my next piece of advice would be to read a lot, and I don't just mean game supplements and gaming books, although they are useful. Factual books and more traditional fiction books can also be a great source of ideas. Now, you're used to seeing my role-playing collection behind me in all of my Red Dice Diaries videos. However, I've also got a lot of other shelves with other types of books on them. Okay, so here we can see numerous reference books, from comics encyclopedias to bestiaries, from popular fantasy to Times World Atlases and histories of the world, plus mythology. I also have a lot of fiction books and true crime books, which are great for inspiration for more investigative based games. We can also see the startings of my horror fiction collection over here, and many fantasy books. As we pan up, you'll see that there are more fantasy books from various different fantasy worlds and sub-genres that I've enjoyed throughout my life. Even such things as a DIY book, and again over here we have various faux factual books and slightly more historically referenced fantasy, over to comic fiction and travel guides, and yes, even foreign dictionaries, anything that will provide inspiration. On my landing bookshelf, again, I've got more fantasy books, and the vast majority of my science fiction book collection and horror collection, including some comedic fantasy such as Terry Pratchett and many anthologies of short stories, a lot of which have provided inspiration for my numerous World of Darkness games. There's also more books on classical myth and legends. If you want to track something down, go to the source. You can also see from this shelf that I'm a bit of a Stephen King and Tolkien fan. I also have a couple of compended books of H.P. Lovecraft and the complete works of Conan, as well as more recent and popular fiction. In another room in my house, I've got mythology dictionaries, various books on herbalism, astrology, dreams, crystals, herbs, plants, spells, witchcraft, ancient magics and systems of beliefs. All stuff that can be mined for potential future inspiration and ideas, including A to Z's of British ghosts and books of witchcraft. Anything I can reach into and pull ideas out of. When I was younger, I used to love going to second-hand bookshops where I could pick up lots of different books for 50p to a pound. That's in GBP. And I picked up many books, old gaming books, etc. as well, such as, here's a couple, The Forest of Doom by Ian Livingstone and the classic City of Thieves, also by Ian Livingstone. And those are just two fighting fantasy books that I picked up many years ago, and they cost me very little. Now, I used to love going to these second-hand bookshops, and not because I'm a massively avid reader or because I used to devour the books every single page, but because every time I read them there was always something in them that sparked off an idea or got the thought processes going. Now, there may be less second-hand bookshops about nowadays. I don't know about your specific area, but certainly where I live there's far less of them about. However, we do now have the internet, and there are people posting fiction, articles, various other written pieces on there, and reading through them can give you a wealth of ideas. My next piece of advice would be watch TV and films, since they often have different methods of pacing and use lots of tricks such as flashbacks and cutaway scenes, just to name two, that can be very useful in role-playing sessions. Many TV series are also often have an episodic format, which is similar to how some role-playing campaigns run, and you can get some great ideas for pacing and character development over a long arc from these TV series. There are lots of services like Netflix and others available nowadays that give you easy access to films on the internet, but since you're watching this video, it's a safe bet to assume that at the very least you've got access to YouTube. Now, typing in a word or a subject of interest on YouTube can often bring up a number of interesting videos, and watching some of them can provide you with a wealth of information. Next, I would advise you to talk to other people as much as possible. Now, some people would have you believe that the creative process involves the creator locking themselves in a secluded location until they have that eureka moment and the problem is solved. Now, I'm not saying that that's impossible. However, having other people's input and ideas can spark off ideas in your own mind. It's all about that melting pot again. The more ideas you're putting in, the more likely you are to get something extraordinary out. Someone might suggest something, and that might send you off down an entirely different route of inspiration. Even if an idea is not immediately useful, jot it down anyway in your notebook or whatever you have. You never know when an idea is going to prove it useful in the future. Next, I would advise you get out there and have a walkabout. Books and reference materials are great as far as they go, and they can give you a lot of great ideas, but they aren't any substitute for actually experiencing something. For example, if you know that your next game is going to feature the players wandering through the Elven Forest, and you've got time and the ability to, why not actually have a walk through a forest or a wooded area in the early hours of the morning, looking at the light filtering through the leaves over the haze of the horizon and seeing the early morning mist curling around the branches will add a great deal of verisimilitude and that edge of realism to your descriptions, which can be so important for drawing your players into the game and getting people to invest in your game world. I would also say keep your eye out for and collect inspiring imagery. Anything you see online or in real life that inspires you or that you think's interesting, either print it out if you can or take a picture and again stick it in your notebook. They say a picture paints 1,000 words, and whilst that is a cliche that's often used, imagery really can jog memories and set off trains of thought. So put anything that interests you in your notebook. If you want, make your own sketch of it. It doesn't have to be brilliant. The purpose of it is just as an aid memoir. I would also advise you, don't just write down the fully formed ideas. Write down your mistakes and your misspellings, etc. Any odd sort of ideas you have. Even when you make a mistake, you can still get something great out of it, and it can provide some interesting ideas. But as I said earlier, memory is very fallible, and unless you write it down in the moment, it might be lost. For example, when writing the notes of this video, initially, instead of saying a picture paints 1,000 words, I wrote down a picture takes 1,000 words. But I put that mistake down in my notebook. Maybe in the future I'll do a story revolving around a painting where 1,000 words have to be sacrificed to it to prevent some catastrophe. Or perhaps the painting itself is an entity that feeds on language, and the dead languages we have in the world are the only evidence left behind of its previous feedings. Who knows, but it's certainly an interesting idea, and therefore it goes down in the notebook. My final piece of advice would be watch gaming related channels on YouTube. Now, I'm not just saying that to big up my own channel, although obviously I am very, very grateful to all the people who subscribe and watch my videos. But there are many channels with people talking about their games, opinions and ideas, all of which you can mine for potential inspiration. And don't be afraid to ask questions about the subject of the video or suggest what ideas it's given you in the comments boxes. Most people who produce game related material do so because they love this great hobby of ours, and generally they'll respond well to a politely worded inquiry. If you have the equipment and the facility to do so, why not make your own video response? Often the back and forth of many people producing videos around a similar subject can create a real community feel to it, and can often throw up ideas that you yourself may not have considered. So there you go, there's a few pieces of advice for the would-be thieving GM, and as I say, I really would advise all of you GMs out there designing your home campaigns, don't limit yourself to what sources of inspiration you choose. Take them from anywhere and from anything you can get your hands on. So I hope if you've enjoyed this video, you'll consider clicking on a like and subscribe to my channel. We put out new videos every week. If you have any comments on this video or your own suggestions, please feel free to put them in the comments box below or hit me up in the Google Plus links. Or if you have the equipment, even better, make your own video response, and don't forget to link me down below so that I can watch your videos about it and we can all draw ideas from each other. Until I see you next time, thank you very much for watching and for listening. Take care.